European countries are pushing back against a U.S.-backed peace plan for Ukraine that would reportedly force Kyiv to give up more land and partially disarm. Sources tell Reuters that Washington is signaling that Ukraine must accept a U.S.-drafted framework to end the war. European Union foreign ministers meeting in Brussels said they would not accept demands for Ukraine to make punishing concessions. In Ukraine, nightly bombardments from Russia continue, killing civilians and causing power cuts as winter sets in. Okay, joining me now is Christian Leuprecht, military analyst and visiting fellow at the Wilfred Martin Center for European Studies, which is why he joins us from Berlin. Nice to see you, Christian.
Hello.
Talk to me about this U.S.-backed peace plan. It seems Trump is really on this crusade for world peace. Will he get it this time?
Well, as you say, it is U.S.-backed. It doesn't appear to be backed by anyone else other than perhaps Russia, and that's, of course, part of the problem. And I think allies are getting confused because there are multiple tracks of negotiation, it appears, by the United States alone going on at the same time. And so I think both the Ukraine and European allies are having a bit of a hard time to track where exactly the U.S. is at and what is the plan. But it appears that the essence of the plan hasn't changed, that there's this 28-point plan, and it appears that sort of Russia and the U.S. have broadly agreed on these points. So now the devil is in the details about are these points actually operationalizable in a way that is acceptable to Ukraine and to European allies.
Among those conditions is ceding Donetsk, Luhansk, Zaporizhzhia, Kherson. These are areas in the east to Russia. Do you think that's actually possible, or that they would agree to that? Ukraine would agree to that?
So from a negotiating position, Ukraine of course is going to say it will never cede any land, because why make any concessions before you're actually in a position to have a negotiation? At the same time, of course, we know that these conflicts end by some sort of land swap. If you look at the end of World War II, of course, there were significant land swaps between the Soviet Union and the United States, for instance. And so it's not only, I think, conceivable, but I think it is a reality that there's likely going to be some trading of land. The challenge is if you trade land, either both sides are trying to get a strategic advantage in the type of land that they ultimately trade. But the end of the war is going to be something like effectively the end of World War II, which then resulted in the Cold War between the East and West. So we're going to have a stalemate, and I think we're going to have some sort of demilitarized zone and efforts from both sides to pull back from the line.
If Ukraine were, in fact, to disarm, as this peace plan suggests they do, wouldn't that put them in a far weaker strategic position from a military viewpoint, should Russia ever decide to invade again?
So it depends all on the security guarantees that are actually provided to Ukraine. And the context in which those guarantees, how robust ultimately those guarantees are going to be. But of course, it's a pretty tall order to ask Ukraine to disarm, but Russia won't disarm. And so Ukraine is obviously going to say that that's not acceptable, but it might be acceptable if the United States, for instance, were willing to put troops on the ground. But of course, the U.S. has always said it's not going to put troops on the ground. So a European NATO ally is going to put troops on the ground. What do the security assistance and guarantees going to look like? Those are sort of the details that may possibly make a deal acceptable, but the key is it has to be acceptable on Ukraine's sovereign terms, because otherwise, effectively, Ukraine is ceding precisely the sort of sovereignty that Putin is trying to undermine.
Do you think anything in this 20-point plan has legs that could be a framework they build upon, or do you think this is something that's going to be tossed and said, no, let's start again?
Well, wars end in one of two ways. One side wins, which is clearly not going to be the case in this here, because the West is not willing to provide enough weapons for Ukraine to get its land back. Or there's going to have to be some sort of a ceasefire and a negotiated settlement. And it seems the Trump administration likes to have both at the same time. So rather than just getting a ceasefire, it's trying to put together in place a plan that might actually be sustainable. The last plan that was put in place was clearly heavily disadvantageous to Ukraine, which is the Minsk Accord, in which the United States didn't really have much of a role in terms of its negotiation. So this is the U.S. saying, look, I mean, last time we tried this, it didn't work out well. So here's a plan, and let's find a way for people to back the plan. But ostensibly, any plan that might be acceptable to Putin is going to be necessarily disadvantageous to Ukraine. And there's going to have to be, when there's zero trust with Russia, why would you agree to a plan that Russia might violate tomorrow? So what are the guarantees?
Absolutely. Okay. Thank you for that, Christian. Enjoy your time in Berlin. Christian Leuprecht, military analyst. Nice to see you.